So those white buildings behind me are actually on the Syria side of the border. So again, just about half a mile from where I'm standing. And that is a United Nations camp for a United Nations Disengagement Observer Force, UNDOF, that's been there since the 1970s. And they're an unarmed group of UN observers that is supposed to be enforcing a ceasefire and the buffer zone between Israel and Syria. Now, they've been spectacularly ineffective for the vast majority of their history. There's about 1,200 UN troops over there right now, again, unarmed. They have been very critical of Israel even being here. And as a matter of fact, there have been times like between 2013 and I think 2018 when they had to abandon that base because they had so many of their guys getting kidnapped by the Al-Nusra Front and Hezbollah. And so they moved across and were staying in Israel for a time, even though they have been, I would say, for the most part, fairly hostile to Israel, although Israel coordinates with them when they do patrols and things like that. Now, those guys burn through about $60 million a year, and that's their budget. But 27% of that is pretty much funded by the United States. There are no U.S. troops over there. These are troops from India and Fiji and Ireland and places like that. But suffice it to say, it's another one of those UN boondoggles. It's especially useless now because the Israelis hold all of the territory around it, including up to 15 kilometers inside Syria. So there's not really any reason for the UN to be there, but they still have their little camp there and they're spending their money and doing a whole lot of nothing out here in the Golan Heights. The town of Quneitra is a ghost town. It's been empty for years, and so it's been a hotbed for terrorism and people firing mortars and rockets and drones across here into Israel. That has happened many times, and again, right next to the UN camp, and they can't do anything about it. So one that sort of begs the question of why in the world are we funding the United Nations Disengagement Observer Force? Very interesting times in Syria. That's the kind of understatement. I just got off the phone before this hit with a guy who's in Sweda or Sweda. Now let's look at the map so you can see what we're talking about. Okay, so check out the map here. We are over here in Israel. Here's the Sea of Galilee right here. And then this dotted line represents the internationally recognized border of Israel. This dotted line over here is the actual border of Israel that they have held for many years. Okay, so this is Golan Heights up in here. And so if you drive up there, you can drive on this road, and you can go. Oscar and I drove right along this road, and we went to Quneitra right here. That's where. So I filmed that stand up from this corner of this road right here. So that's where that video was shot, right there, just across. And this is the now sort of de facto border of Syria. Although, as I explained before, Quneitra is a ghost town, and now the Israelis have pushed about 8 miles further into Syria and are holding another line, and that may be what this line is out here, which is the line that they have taken up to Mount Hermon right there. So this is now the new de facto border of between Israel and Syria. And Israelis live up to this line. So this is a buffer zone in here. Now, where's Sweda? Sweda is right here south of Damascus, up in here. No, I'm sorry. It's down in here. It's further down. Okay, so this area is the area that the Druze inhabit. What we've had over the last few days, weeks, is government forces coming from Damascus, again, illegitimate government, driving down this road, and not just, it's more criminality than anything. They're not just coming down and attacking, but they're coming down and robbing people, kidnapping people, detaining people, just basically making a nuisance of themselves down there. All right, so now I want to show you a video that I just filmed a minute ago. I got a chance to talk via Skype to a guy in Sweden who his name is Shotti, and I quickly translated his Arabic interview into English so that you could hear what he said. And I threw a little B-roll on it. You'll notice some of the B-roll is blurred, and that's just to make YouTube happy so they don't demonetize the video. But take a listen to what he had to say. I think he puts a pretty fine point on it about what's going on in Syria right now.
The background of the event started on Friday night, the 11th of July, when an armed group affiliated with the Bedouin tribes kidnapped a merchant from As-Suwaida on the Damascus-As-Suwaida road. He was held for several hours and a sum of money was taken from him, and he was assaulted before they released him. The Damascus to As-Suwaida road has been recording daily violations against citizens for 5 months, including shootings, assaults, kidnappings, robbery, and sectarian attacks against citizens as Druze. Just a small point, these tribal factions are unofficially affiliated with the Ministry of Defense. The truth of the violations happening today against the people of As-Suwaida is evidence that this radical regime cannot change and become civil, because it carried the jihadist mentality and the mentality that rejects minority or those different from them, even if they are from the Sunni sect itself. The truth is that the de facto authority is an exclusionary power and cannot execute. The promises it made to European countries and America are contradicted by what is happening on the ground, which goes against all the promises and commitments it made. It is unable to control those groups.
Okay, so that's not the Shotti Kalul that you were thinking, Mama Rissa. That's a different Shotti. That's a fairly common name up there, and that Shotti has some pretty righteous hair, I have to say. That guy's got a hairdo. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm thinking I should probably do my hair that way. That'd be pretty good. I talked to a couple of guys that are in Syria, and they all tell me the same thing. That today I talked to them just now. They all tell me the same thing. These guys are putting on a front for the rest of the world, but they are really the Islamic State. And they're even going around with Islamic State patches on their uniforms and stuff. I've seen pictures of that. So take that for what it's worth. All right. So Israel got involved. What he's saying is, Shotti was saying, the government forces started coming down from Damascus, and they were winning. The Druze kind of tribes down there, they just kind of got together and got a few weapons together and were trying to fight off the government forces, which had tanks and trucks and rockets and all sorts of things. And they were losing, and losing badly. Then the Israelis got involved. And when that happened, at the order of Netanyahu and his cabinet, they ordered the IDF to stop the government forces from pushing further into Druze territory and hurting the Druze more. They want to preserve those guys down there because the Druze basically function like another buffer zone for the Israelis. So the Israeli Air Force went in and started absolutely pounding the government forces taken out their tanks. You saw in that video a tank that was burning, taken out their trucks. There are a bunch of videos coming out of just destroyed military equipment all over the place. And the Israelis turned them back. When they did that, the Druze were able to push back in and retake areas of Asweda that they had lost. And so now things are seeming to calm down because the government forces have turned around and gone the other way. They realize they can't compete with the Israeli Air Force. Now, this is very interesting because the president of Syria, the new guy, al-Shara, went to Baku, Azerbaijan just last week and met with an Israeli delegation, sat down with the Israelis to talk about how to work together and how to have peace between Syria and Israel. And they floated the idea of even, eventually joining the Abraham Accords and so on and so forth. And again, I don't know how much that's just talk. Probably a lot of it is just talk. However, they were just there, sitting down. Now, later on, the Syrian regime came out and said al-Shara was not in any meetings with Israelis, but there's other sources that say, yeah, he was in there. I'm sure he was. So he just went and met with Israelis about how we can all get along, and now they're not getting along so well. So the statements that are coming out from the Syrian government right now on Telegram are getting a little darker, let's say. They're saying things like, we will defend Syria, from all aggression, with every ounce of blood, that kind of thing. With every weapon at our disposal. So Israel's taking a gamble here. There's no two ways about it. This could go either way. I think Israel is bound and determined that, yeah, if you want to be our friend, if you want to deconflict so that we don't run into each other, if you want to even join the Abraham Accords, that's great. We'll take it. But we don't trust you further than we can throw you. And so we're going to maintain a buffer zone and maintain our own ability to keep our people safe from all the crazies running around in Syria still. Because al-Shara's forces are not made up of like the former Syrian army that they just like, okay, now you work for al-Shara. No, that's not how that worked. The current Syrian government forces are made up of about 25 different militia groups, basically homegrown terror groups and criminal cartels inside Syria. So the ones that are actually fighting with the Druze are a Bedouin tribe, or a couple of Bedouin tribes, that are engaged in smuggling. They're the ones who do all the smuggling of drugs and weapons and people and whatever into Lebanon from Iran. And Israel's like, nope, can't have those guys. So we're going to back the Druze. And they just picked up like, what did they say, 3 tons of weapons and explosives out of a cache that they found. I wonder if they're going to turn those over to the Druze and say, here, have at it. That is what they've been doing. That's the model they've been going to now in Gaza. This is one of the things we've been seeing in Gaza, is that the Israelis are starting to rely more and more, little by little, on a few Palestinians to work with them and help them get the job done. As a matter of fact, there was a building collapse last week where a bunch of Palestinians were helping the IDF in Gaza to clear out buildings as they were moving through the area. And so they would send these Palestinians and go in there and look around and tell us if you see any booby traps or anything like that, and then we'll come in and diffuse them or whatever. And these guys went into that building, and there was a booby trap, and it blew up, and the building came down on top of them. The Israelis pulled those Palestinians out of that rubble and took them to the hospital in Israel. They medevaced a bunch of Gazan Palestinians straight into Israel and are treating them now because they were working on behalf of Israel. The GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, passing out aid every day, 1.5 million meals inside Gaza. They're making big use of Gazan Palestinians as employees to help them distribute that aid. I don't know how they vet those guys. I don't know how they figure that out. I know the IDF has got a lot of intelligence on the people of Gaza and the people of Syria and the people of Iran, the people of Lebanon, and et cetera, et cetera. They're probably the world's best at human intelligence collection. So they must have their ways of determining whether or not a guy is, has a bent toward Hamas before they hire them, but they are hiring them. And is that interesting to you? I mean, to me, that's like, wow. Now we're moving into a different phase of this war. It's gone on so long that they're starting to separate the wheat from the chaff a little bit in Gaza and actually make use of some of these Gazans to help them accomplish their goals.